you know, you would think that the Toronto Blue Jays are the best team in the history of the world based on the way people talk about them on Twitter the last week. Dan, it's hilarious.
You know, it's good to see them. It's good to see them being good, though. You know, I still don't think they have enough arms, and you look at David Price's track record against the Yankees, it's not great.
Well, yeah, it was funny. They held back David Price, and David Price had a great outing against Minnesota on Monday. They held back David Price so they could line up the rotation so that he would face the Yankees twice. Look at his record at Yankee Stadium.
Not good. And the Yankees are mashing right now.
Yeah,
they are. But you don't know if that'll go cold. You never know what the guy might do on a new team. You know, you can't go and be married 100% to those stats.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're right.
Now, Dan was mentioning something, and I'll segue from baseball into hockey this way. Tonight at Yankee Stadium, as you can see, Luis Severino, who is their #1 pitching prospect, will debut against the Red Sox. And by the way, the Red Sox just look. I mean, I've never seen a more
dumpster fire.
I've never seen a more disinterested team, and you know, you've got guys making $15 to $20 million like Pedro Sandoval and Hanley Ramirez, and they're like giggling out in the field and booting the ball all over the place. But Severino is making his debut, so that's going to be appointment television for me. But Dan, you were talking about playing, you know, trading, you know, cards, baseball cards, hockey cards, and the fact that Connor McDavid, his card is coming out.
The first one, the brand new 15-16 product launches today, Upper Deck MVP. It's a cheap product. It's only $45 a box, which is actually cheap. But it's like, you know, it's designed for you know, it's a very kid-friendly product, but one every 960 packs is a redemption for a Connor McDavid card. Because the rule is you can't get a card made until you play a game in the NHL. So once he plays the game, they send you the rookie card, and that card is already fetching like $500 on eBay. It's going to be like just. They'll
send it to you when they make it. Like it's not going to be the minute he hits the ice.
No. A lot of time. It's the card that everybody's going to be chasing is his Upper Deck Young Gun. That comes out in November. They're talking. It's going to be like coming out for Crosby like prices.
No, Russ, when I collected baseball cards and hockey cards in the 80s, you know, and then a little bit in the 90s when I got back into it, but the cards that I was always shooting for was the rookie cards.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, like, you know, you'd have a certain amount of rookies in the regular set, but then Topps would put out this set like around the middle of the season for players that had been traded. I remember, I think it was 84 or 85, there was a Pete Rose card with the Expos.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple, I don't know, I think Gooden was in that pack too.
Well, yeah, Gooden was in it because he was in like 84 Fleer Update, and he made it. He didn't come out until like base set for 85 Topps, but 84 he started to sneak in on those update sets. Yeah.
Now the thing is, what are you showing here, Dan?
This is a little project I did. These are all like Islander greats. These are all hand signed from packs.
Wow.
You got like Al Arbor, Bossy, Trottier, Dennis Potvin. Then it goes to like the new guys like Tavares. You see all the rookies on the bottom here, Lee Strom. Even Howie Rose autograph card.
Nice.
I was working on that for about a year.
And yeah. I was literally crushed when I heard this. I heard a guy who owned a memorabilia company on a radio broadcast a couple weeks ago, and the host of the show used as an example a Mickey Mantle rookie card. I think was 52, I believe.
51 Bowman.
Yeah, 51 Bowman. Like what the value of the actual Mantle rookie was, and then he asked what the value of that card was if you had it authorized and signed, an autographed copy of that card, and he said that the autograph reduced the value of the card by 75% because it was defacing the card.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, but it's different if you're getting an autographed rookie card now because they're
these come out of the pack like this.
Yeah, they're that way. Some are on labels, some aren't. The You know, the important thing is if you don't want to try and go for that 1 in 960 packs, there's a couple of ways to get a McDavid. It's not a rookie, but you could do well. In the game already had him in their sets, and they're expensive. I have an autograph card from one of them that I opened, and it's pretty nice. He was in there last year. Also, Upper Deck did put out a Team Canada set last year, and it had 2 Connor McDavid cards. That's going to be a lot easier to get than the others. They're technically his first cards. Actually, technically, in a very, you can't say it's professional, but it's the first professional company, like professionally licensed company for the Upper Deck one in the Team Canada, where Leaf, was during his CHL days. So you can get those, and for Crosby, those cards were crazy. Like the Rimouski card is really good. So I would tell people, worry about lining those up first before you do the redemption. That's just a pro tip.
People are going to be going nuts over the Young Gun, though. When Upper Deck Series 1 hits in November, that's going to be like hysteria.
And the funny thing was, when I was collecting, I remember, and this is baseball, this was before Upper Deck. It was Fleer, Dunross, and Topps.
Oh, yes, yep.
And I remember, like, a guy like a Ken Griffey rookie card.
Mm-hmm.
You loaded up on, say you loaded up on Fleer, and the market would tell you maybe 6 months to a year later which one of the 3 companies was the card that was the most valued. I think with Griffey it was Fleer or Dunross. It wasn't Topps, because Topps was mass.
It was Upper Deck.
It was Upper Deck. Okay.
The first year of Upper Deck, that Griffey, everybody wanted that card.
He was card number 1. Plus there were a lot of damages with that, so it made it hard to get him.
Yeah, so, okay, I mean, I just wanted to start off with that, but some interesting stuff there. Let's get the show started. Russ, you start. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, August 5th, 2015.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Dan Petru.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockeybuzzcast here on Hockeybuzz.com. Eck is not available today, but he will be back tomorrow, maybe with some rumors. We'll discuss some players who are still on the market in the first week of August, and more, like as we said the last few days, these players are likely going to be training camp invites, but some of them might not get invites. So we'll go through a list of players and see which ones we think will get invited and which ones may be out to lunch. To start off here, a note here from Chris Johnston from Sportsnet, who mentions that the Las Vegas ownership group headed by Bill Foley, I think it's called Black Knights LLC. This group has been invited by the NHL to go to the second stage of the 3-stage expansion process. Now, there hasn't been a mention yet of Quebec, but and we did note that last week Quebecor, who was the head of that bid, had been soliciting other investors to sort of allay the cost of the $500 million expansion fee. So maybe that announcement's coming later on. Maybe it's just Vegas. But, Russ, what do you think? Do you think this is – I mean, it sounds like this is – the one way or the other, Vegas is definitely going to be the team that gets in.
Yeah, I always felt Vegas had the inside track once they got the application in, once you knew the stadium or arena, rather, was coming. So, to me, they've always had the inside track. Quebec's going to get a team, but like Kevin Allen said a few weeks ago, it's going to take time. They're going to decide when the right time to add that team is, and people in Quebec are just going to have to deal with it. I get that they would love another team in Canada, but actually, if you started it right away with the Canadian economy not being great, it's not a good time. So actually waiting on it is smart, and putting in the Vegas team first is smarter.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, Gary Bettman came out in an interview, I think it was in the Boston Globe, and said, well, the current state of the Canadian dollar isn't going to affect our situation in terms of an expansion team to Quebec City. I'm a little skeptical of that because, the Canadian dollar, when they signed that Rogers Sportsnet deal, was at around 93 or 94 cents. It's down at 76 cents right now.
Yeah, that's a problem. We talked to this, it's one thing when it's that close, 93, 94 cents, and a few years ago it was 1-to-1 or 99 cents American. It was to the point where it was pretty much an even exchange. And I remember when I went to Canada, I think the last time I was there, I gave them $100 and they gave me 99 back, and they laughed at me. So,
conversely, I was there when it was 33% down, and boy, I was just buying everything.
Right. Yeah, I've actually been there too, and it's been that bad too. And so, Gary Bettman can say what he wants, but geez, that's a big gap right there, and the Canadian dollar affects the NHL directly, and it really affects the salary cap too. So I would be very skeptical. Quebec City's going to get a team. There's no doubt about it. It's just I'm very skeptical. I don't think it's going to happen right away. I think it has to be the right time because you can't go into that with a losing proposition. Now, granted, it will make money. They will, generate revenue. They will sell out that building and probably work on a new TV deal with that team.
Yeah.
Well, let's just call them the Nordiques because we all know they're going to be called Nordiques.
Right.
But I don't know if the timing is important. You have to go in. The economy. You have to take the economy into account, and it's definitely a factor. I think Vegas will do okay. I do think I think it's a novelty. I think the casinos will be on board with it. I think it'll be fun. Personally, in my perfect world, which of relocation and expansion, I would probably take Phoenix and move them to Vegas. But they're going to get an expansion team, and I see that happening. I just really wish that Seattle and Portland, Oregon could get their arena situation squared away because I think those would be great Western Conference cities.
I don't think it's coincidental that the Coyote new agreement with Glendale, the renegotiated agreement with Glendale, was only for 2 years. I think it was essentially
right.
This is the time that is going to be needed for either Portland or Seattle to get their things straight. Seattle. I know Seattle wants to do their arena in concert with an NBA franchise to have an NHL and an NBA franchise sharing the dates. So I mean, it may take that amount of time to get things started and get things built, and maybe even if it isn't complete, they can play in that obsolete key arena for at least half a season if things fall behind. But I think that is the plan. But in terms of Quebec, the building is there. I mean, to me, if this is not if an announcement doesn't come out today that they're in the second stage of the process, to me it's got to be all financial. And Russ, the funny thing is, if you notice and this is not an economics lesson here, and I'm not an economist, but the trouble with the KHL and the trouble with the Canadian dollar started with declining oil prices. The Canadian dollar and the Russian ruble are petrodollars, and the problem is that the KHL and they have started. I think they dropped 4 franchises, and the Canadian franchises are going to be not making as much of a profit because the Canadian dollar is declining, and it's going to have an effect on the KHL and it's going to have an effect on the NHL as well.
Yeah, no question. I mean, look, if you're a new owner, yes, like Dan said, you're going to sell out and all those things, but you're already starting out paying your players in American dollars, so you're like 20% behind before you open the doors. Nobody wants to start a business that way, especially a sports franchise where costs are really crazy and margins aren't as good as you think when you start out. I mean, there's a lot of startup costs. So that's where I think the problem lies, and that's why there's no question in my mind they should wait. Like, I would definitely have them wait. There's no reason to rush a team in for Canada because otherwise, we could be in a situation down the road where all of a sudden Quebec's not doing well even with the new arena, and you got to move them again. That's the last thing you want to do.
And you have to realize that if it's an expansion franchise based on the way the NHL has operated regarding expansion franchises, and I don't think it's going to change, these teams are going to stink for 3, 4, 5 years at least. They'll get high draft picks, but it takes 2 or 3 years to develop those high draft picks. You don't want to throw an 18-year-old kid, even if he's a potential superstar, into the NHL with no supporting cast around them whatsoever. So it's going to take time for these teams to develop. And Quebec and or Vegas, they're going to be destroyed on the ice for that time period.
Maybe, because here's what I'm thinking. We're going to have a draft again, right? We're going to have an expansion draft. Right. You're going to see a lot of teams saying, hey, gee, here's a good chance to expose some of our players who we think make too much money, but an expansion team can take some of these contracts. I'm just throwing out a name, like a Luke Chen or an Andrew McDonald, or someone who makes a little bit too much money but is a pretty good hockey player. All of a sudden they're going into an expansion team, and maybe they'll still be bad, but I think they'll be a little respectable. It won't be like legendary all-time bad.
I think it all depends on what goalie ends up becoming available.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that right goalie, we've seen what happens.
Right.
Will the NHL have to give the new expansion teams a cap waiver for the first couple seasons? Because you know as well as I do that these teams now, the Leafs, they're going to expose Dion Phaneuf. Please take that $7 million. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're not going to take all those players. They'll take players who they feel can give them some instant return, but also other ones that they can build with in the future. But again, yeah, they're going to be looking more at goalies. Like if there was a top-notch goalie that was making too much money, but they felt like they could win with that goalie, they would give that goalie the money. There's no question. It'd be like the NFL. Like if you had an expansion draft and all of a sudden there's a quarterback there that you could get that could get you up and running, you would do that. It's the same in the NHL.
Well, didn't Florida do that with was Van Beesbrook the guy that they claimed?
Was Van Beesbrook on? No, I thought they traded.
I think they signed him.
Yeah.
Because it was between Van Beesbrook going there and Philly, right? And did he choose Florida?
I'll have to look it up, but I remember because I remember the decision in Philly back in I think it was 97 or 98 between Cujo and Van Beesbrook.
Right.
I went with Cujo, but I was fairly sure that before that, when Florida made the finals, which was in '95, I believe, 96, 95 or 96, 96, against Colorado, that Van Beesbrook was a goaltender they got in the expansion draft. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I'm thinking on my feet here. But
yeah, but if you look at a team that has a few capable goalies, you can only protect so many players. You could, like Russ said, you could see a team not being as bad because they have someone who can keep them in a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a solution, but the thing is that if you're starting a franchise right now, more than likely you want to get the number one pick the first 3 years. So maybe getting that goaltender, it helps you win games, but it doesn't help you build a franchise.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Wow.
Yeah. So okay. We were talking baseball.
But you're saying for expansion to take the Edmonton model, right? Just draft all forwards, no defensemen, no goalies, so you can.
Well, yeah. Let's draft all forwards, all the same type of forward, over and over and over again until. Okay. Yeah. But anyway. So we were talking about baseball as we led into the show, and we recognize the fact that the races in the NL and the AL are both very exciting right now. The Angels and the Blue Jays, the Twins, the Astros. There's like 7-8 teams that are realistic for the 2 wild card spots in the American League. In the National League, I think it's almost that much, but the Mets have made a run lately. The Cubs seem like they're in it. I don't know how far they are out of it, but I mean, right now there's. What I'm saying is we're at August 5th now, where we've got a little under 2 months left to go in the baseball season. You have multiple teams in the race for those 2 wild card spots, and if you take that, extrapolate that, and take that to the NHL with their current system of 16 teams, 8 in each conference. I know that when they were when there was negotiations during the lockout about the new CBA, I think it was Nick Kyprios from Sportsnet that reported that one of the options out there in terms of adding revenue was to go to a wild card format and to go to 20 playoff teams with the wild card making it down to 16 after a brief first round of either a single elimination like baseball does or a best of 3 like they used to do in the NHL in the late 70s and the early 80s. Russ, I think this would be a winner, especially if they expand to 32. I think going to 20 is not something. I think it makes sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I've heard once they expand, they'll do the 1-game playoff. That's what I heard. I heard that's going to be once they get to that 32, they'll do it, and I think that's when you'll see that. And at that point, it probably will make sense. It'll still be tough for the team that gets eliminated. I mean, it really is, but But we've seen this happen in baseball, like, before they had that in their system. The Mets played that one-game playoff with the Reds.
Right.
It's a great game. I remember being extremely excited. Mets had Al Leiter going, pitched a great game. They advanced. The Reds didn't, but it was a fantastic game. I mean, anytime you can get an exciting game like that and they still get an extra gate out of it and everything else, it is a win-win. There's really no downside to it other than you're going to have a good team eliminated. That's just the way it is. But that's it. I mean, that's, in sports now, that's what you have to deal with. That's why dynasties are dying and you don't see them as much, because as the playoff rate, as everything in the playoffs gets tricked out, as I'd like to say, it's going to change that. So that's why dynasties will be pretty much, in the NHL, will be non-existent.
And Dan, it's not only an extra gate for whoever has the home ice advantage for that one game. It's another potential television contract. I mean,
right.
we saw with MLB. I mean, I think that the wild card round, is it TBS that has the rights to it, or yeah. So I mean, there's additional revenue sitting there waiting for the NHL, and I think they don't, like Russ said, I don't think they want to go to 20 out of 30, 2/3 of the league making the playoffs, basically playing.
They had to deal with the jokes for that and everything else.
Right, but 20 out of 32 is a little more, that's a little more reasonable.
Yeah, I think if you do the one-game play-in, I really like the thought of that, and the wild card round, one-game play-in for those teams to get in. I think you could sell that as a package to a different network, maybe like a Fox Sports, a CBS Sports. So I'm like, there's definitely opportunities there to market that and maximize some payroll. And I think you'll get good ratings because they'll be like the only game in town in those slots. And I also wouldn't be opposed to doing it like baseball does. Let's say two teams tie, and their head-to-head record's the same, and they have the same regulation wins. They should play off. They should do a one-game playoff to see who makes it. I don't love tiebreakers. If you have the same number of points, and let's say your head-to-head is the same, you should have to play a game to get in.
Well,
and I did want to, before all the people go crazy about dynasty, the Islanders were the last dynasty. I don't care about 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5. I don't buy into any of that.
You're just sucking up to Dan because he's an Islander fan. Come on.
Listen, that's the last thing. Dan knows you well enough to know that is the last thing.
I know. I'm just kidding. But the structure that I heard that I think is reasonable is basically the last 2 playoff spots right now, the 7-8, the 2 wild cards, to have 7, 8, 9, and 10. 7 play 10, 8 play 9, with the 7 and the 8 getting the home ice advantage in a one game, and then whoever wins those games would play, probably the division winners. That makes the most sense. It's one game. Right now, the season ends on Sunday. The playoffs begin on Wednesday. You could have 2 games on Monday, 2 games on Tuesday, and start the playoffs Wednesday and Thursday. So I think that fits perfectly. It makes a lot of sense. The only people it screws are people who do hockey pools, because they're not gonna know who the final 16 are until the day before the draft, and they're not gonna be able to hold their draft until maybe even the first round of the playoffs starts, or so. Who cares about that? Who cares about that?
Right. So, bettors, people who bet are very smart and creative people. I'm sure they'll come up with a solution.
Yeah, exactly. That's the last thing I worry about.
Yeah, well, true. I know. Me too. But I just had to consider them. Okay. There are still a sizable amount of free agents out there. Some of them, most of them, are over the age of 30. With the way the NHL is going right now in terms of the youth movement, because younger players are cheaper. I mean, it's obvious the reasons why, but there are still veteran players out there who might be able to contribute, but I think right now teams are waiting maybe a couple weeks to see if they can get these players on tryout deals. And then, now I know for a fact that when the Leafs invited Mason Raymond a couple years ago, Dave Nonis, their GM, and Raymond's representatives negotiated the deal to sign him before they extended the tryout, and they negotiated the deal at that point. So if he made the team, this is what you got.
Well,
So
but there's also extenuating circumstances with that, right? Because Raymond was in Vancouver with him, right?
Right.
And was he already his agent too, previously? Right. So I mean, so that's like, how many times is that all going to line up?
Right, but you also have to factor in that there are players out there that a lot of people didn't think were going to be in this position, and there'll be multiple teams. I mean, I don't remember who it was, but there was one player who was on a tryout contract with one team. He played pretty well, but they didn't take jump at the opportunity, and then he ended up signing with another team who liked the way he played. So, I mean, that's a possibility too. It ended up being basically a preview for that team to see if the guy was still had something in the league. So
yeah, I remember that happening. It was a few years ago. I remember Mark Parrish got a tryout again with the Islanders on a second tour, and he didn't really work out. But they ended up the Dallas Stars ended up signing him, I believe. So I mean, that's definitely happened before.
Yeah. Now, we'll just go through a list of, let's say, 7 or 8 players here, just to see whether you think that these players have any, well, first, whether they have any redeeming value as players still, whether they can still contribute. Because, I mean, that is a factor here. I mean, this isn't the fact that these players, that managers are doing these players favors. They want to get a player who can contribute and help at a reasonable salary. Now, I know, and I'm writing something today about, Toronto has around $2.5 million under their salary cap, but they actually have more room because they haven't put Nathan Horton on LTIR, or they won't do that until they go over the $71.4 million cap. So they actually have almost $8 million in cap room to play with if they wanted to be adventurous. They have the room to go out and sign a player, a veteran player, to a tryout, just to hope that they get somebody who may have some value that they could flip at the trade deadline. And that might be the motivation for teams like Arizona or teams that have a lot of cap room. So, okay, here are a number of players. We'll start out here with former Florida Panther and Detroit Red Wings Stephen Weiss, who was bought out by the Red Wings. He's only 32 years old. He has been a quality player. He's had a slew of injuries over the last few years. Dan, I think there's something there that an NHL team would want to take a chance on. What do you think?
Yeah, I think with the players, a lot of the players we're going to mention is the reason probably why they're still available is they want too many years, or they still think they're a top 6 forward or a top 4 defenseman when you probably have to take a 1-year deal and be a bottom 6 player or a bottom pairing defenseman. I definitely think Steve Weiss could help quite a few teams, but he probably in a bottom 6 role on a 1-year deal. Arizona's going to come up a lot with some of these some of these guys we mentioned, but that's the kind of signing I could see work out well. And if you're one of these teams, like in Arizona, maybe you have to bring them in as an invite. But if they play well, if there's someone you can flip for a mid-level pick at the deadline, that's quality. And when you're rebuilding, as many picks as you can get.
Russ, Stephen Weiss doesn't strike me as a gritty type of bottom 6 forward. He's always been a top 6 player wherever he played. Even in Detroit, they brought him in to be essentially the second-line center, and because of the injuries, it didn't work out. I mean, do you think he's the type of player that can adjust to a third, fourth-line center role?
It's going to be tough for him. I don't think it's his game. I don't think he's ever stayed healthy enough for that. The problem is, like when Detroit was counting on him last year, he went on a nice hot streak for them, and then when he got hurt, that really left him in the lurch. And this is the problem with Stephen Weiss. So I think what you're going to find is somebody might give him a year at $2 million, but that's it.
Right.
And that's really what he's going to have to decide if he's going to want to do it based on his injuries. He's going to have to prove he could play through a season.
Now, we mentioned this name before we went on before we went live here, Dan, and I'll mention it. Lubomir Visnovsky from the Islanders. Now, he's 38 years old, and the reports early in the offseason said he was going to Europe, that he was going to finish out his career in Europe. Then all of a sudden it came out, well, he hasn't signed with a team in Europe. He's keeping his NHL options open. Well, now it sounds like it's Europe again because he hasn't had anybody, really contact him about his NHL options. I mean, that may color things here, but do you think that there's a team out there that's going to take a 38-year-old Lubomir Visnovsky?
Probably not, and if they do, it's a 7-8 role. It's a depth player. He can't be counted on to play a full season with his injuries, and especially the concussion issues. It's a shame, too, because when he was healthy the last 2 years, he's shown some signs that he could still run a power play, he could still move a puck, and when he was hit by that clean hit in the playoffs, it definitely hurt the Islanders. It was definitely, he was playing very good. He had just had a great game before against the Capitals, and then when Wilson took him out on that clean hit, it really threw a wrench into the Islanders' puck-moving abilities. He can still move the puck, and he can still be serviceable, but boy, he's one hit away from probably being out of the league. So I think teams are very risky, do not want to commit to someone like that. Like I said, I think Europe is probably the best destination for him. If a team was to sign him, it would probably be a 7-8 role injury fill-in.
Russ, it strikes me as a sort of a Kimmo Timonen situation. He comes in as sort of the disaster backup, but if you're falling apart at age 38, then you're not really capable of being the backup because you need to be there when that team needs you, and if you don't have durability, then what's the point?
Yeah, I don't think he's the same as Timonen, because Timonen was coming back from a blood clot, not from too many injuries. He was a little banged up for the last couple of years, but nothing to the extent of Visnovsky. I don't think he has any NHL value. I think he needs to learn another language and sign overseas because that's his best shot. I think he's just toying around with this stuff, hoping that someone will be dumb enough to pay him.
Now, Eck mentioned in his update about Christian Ehrhoff, there have been some rumors regarding Ehrhoff and the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think that's obviously the connection between Jarmo Kekalainen, the Finnish general manager, and a Finn in Ehrhoff. Not to say, but I think that might, the fact that the Blue Jackets need help on defense is the big thing, and I think Ehrhoff is probably one of the better defensemen out there. But to me, Ehrhoff strikes me as a guy who can get a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal and not have to go the tryout route, Russ.
Yeah, my problem with him is I think he's trying to get years, and no one can give him years. They're done with that. He's going to have to come in on a 1-year deal, like $3 million, and that's it. And until he's ready to accept that, I don't think anybody's going to buy him. But if he does accept that, then he'll have choices. But I think that's why right now he's sort of hanging out there, and it's probably his agent that's just waiting for that last minute.
And Dan, that seems to be the story with Cody Franzen as well. He's still under the assumption that he can get a multi-year deal somewhere. And I said this a month ago. He'd probably be better off to do what Ehrhoff did last year, take a 1-year deal for decent money. I think where Ehrhoff got $4 million from Pittsburgh, go someplace, put up big numbers, and then hopefully you can get a long-term deal. But he got like 3 1-year deals from Toronto, and the last thing that he wants is another 1-year deal in free agency.
I think both players are similar situations. If you look at them, and they really compare well. I think if both players would take 1-year deals and bottom pairing or 4 or 5 kind of money, there would be teams lining up for these guys because I think there's a lot of teams that could use their services on a 1-year deal. But not a 2-3-year deal. I get Franzen's, frustration too. Obviously, you want to commit to a franchise and you want to be able to settle down and get paid and throw some roots down somewhere. But they're in a situation now where it's like, look, these teams aren't going to waver. If you want to play, you got to take a 1-year deal. You maybe take less money than you want to take, and you might have to go to a team you don't want to go to.
Listen, do what Michael Del Zotto did. It worked out.
Right.
And the surprising thing is,
go to the Flyers. They'll pay any defenseman.
Well, not anymore. They're pretty much capped out.
The surprising thing is that you've got, Franzen is 27. Yuri Tlusty is 27. We're not talking players in the twilight of their career. We're talking about players entering their prime.
All about finances, has nothing to do with their ability.
Right, and that's the thing. It's like with Tlusty, I think Tlusty is going to get a 1-year deal somewhere. But right now, this is like, okay, we make this player sweat. We can save maybe $500,000 and pay him 1.5 or 1.75 instead of paying him over $2 million.
Well, here's the thing. If you're a team that's got somebody promising in camp, don't you want to see what that promising player looks like before you pay this guy? because at the end of the day, if your promising player in camp looks good, that 3 years at 1.3 is a lot easier to fit under the cap.
Well, I mean that's a situation for many teams, and I was saying to Dan before we went live about the Maple Leaf situation where their kids, they want to keep them in junior, they want to keep them in the minors. They're a team that might go for a guy like Yuri Tlusty as a player they could play at the NHL level for a year and then flip at the deadline for an asset, so they can keep their young players down in the minors and down in junior and let them develop. But most other teams, you're right. I think that, like say Buffalo, they want to see if Justin Bailey can make the team, or Hudson Fasching if he was, But yeah, okay. This guy, if you look at his age, you would think that people would be giving him an opportunity, but based on the way he has played the last few years in Philadelphia, Boston, and Buffalo, I don't know whether he's going to get a sniff. Dan, Andre Mazzaros. Is he?
That's a tough one because he showed some signs when he went to Buffalo. He showed some signs of some competency, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Once again, I think he'd have to sign a 1-year deal, bottom pairing minutes. Maybe extra spare parts, 7-8 defenseman, and he's going to have to go to a bad team. Some of these guys are going to be like, look, if I have a chance to play, I might have to go to Edmonton. I might have, no offense to Edmonton, but they're not, they don't have Drew Doughty and Duncan Keith up there, or Arizona, or one of these other younger teams, or maybe even Dallas or someone like that needs defensemen. That's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to suck it up. If they want to play in this league, sometimes you have to suck it up.
Yeah, I mean, Andre Mazzaros, Russ, should be considered a lottery winner because he had to go. He went to Buffalo and benefited from the fact that Buffalo needed to get to the cap floor because he made $4.25 million, the same amount of money that he made when he was with Boston because they needed to get to the cap floor. I don't think he's going to get anywhere close to that. I think he'll get an invitation. What do you think?
Yeah, he'll get an invitation. That's it, from somebody. Most teams want to pay this guy would be like $800,000, honestly, because he's going to get you 5 or 6 goals, and he's going to give up 6 or 7 goals. And so, at the end of the day, you're not talking about quality here.
Yeah. Okay, one more player, and we got to get going then. Brad Boyes. Brad Boyes has had a history of being good in shootouts. Is a decent complementary forward, but because of the lack of importance or the decreased importance of the shootout now with the 3-on-3, I think that's going to hurt him in an opportunity to get a job. Dan, what do you think?
I saw Boyes firsthand for about a season, and he still has those hands, and he still has that shot. It's just his skating. Oh, it's just he can't get from point A to point C without going through the rest of the alphabet. It's just that it's a shame because when he's open, when he can get open and he gets the puck on his tape, he can still put the puck in the back of the net. So maybe like a power play specialist on a bad team, I think could still use him. If you put him next to a center who can get him the puck and can carry the puck, he can still put up 15 to 20 goals. But once again, he's going to have to go to I don't think he's going to a contending team because his skating is a liability at this point.
Yeah, he was the 6th leading scorer on Florida, and if they don't want him back, I don't think anybody's going to want him. I just don't think he fits in the league anymore. He's better off going overseas because nobody's looking for just a power play specialist anymore, and he is too slow.
And that's a team that was so desperate for scoring. Last year. I mean, if they would have been able to get more scoring down the stretch, they might have made the playoffs. But they got Jaromir Jagr, but they moved some of their UFAs out. But yeah, I mean, it's surprising that there wasn't even a sniff there. But I guess they're going with their youth movement, and yeah, it's going to really be tough for Brad Boyes to get a job. But we shall see. Great job, guys. An abbreviated show today. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast with Eck. Thank you to Dan Petru. Thank you to Russ Cohen. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.